6 years ago, I built a house and uploaded it on this channel. 3 years later, I rebuilt most of it, adding details and updating it. And since we seem to be following the rule of 3, I suppose it's time to sit down again and see what we can do. So here's what we have to work with, and the first thing you might notice is that it's very large, like excessively so. Especially those second story windows, they're way too big and throw the proportions way off. We're not exactly going for proportionate to our character, but surely we can do better in terms of the house's proportions. Have I said proportions enough yet? So we're going to size this down considerably, while also paying our respects to the original design, as I don't want this to be completely tearing down the house and doing something different. I want this to be as you look down the line of succession. We've put on glasses that provide more and more definition. I started off pretty aimless, but ultimately tackling the porch first, as I had never added proper railings, and I wanted to. I had a couple ideas as to how this could be accomplished, but I don't regard them as perfect approaches just yet. I feel like we could do better. So for this whole process, we're going to try to make things easier on ourselves. I'm pretty much just going to tear everything out in a section and then rebuild it properly. The only thing, amazingly, that I didn't touch was the door. It seems to be the only thing I really got right, though it doesn't open properly, which I can't remember if it ever would have or an update broke that. So the biggest change, aside from shrinking everything down, was the shift to a beige or cream color. And this is mostly because there aren't really shadows in the game, so the white for the porch and the white for the house were melded together. So I made it easier for myself. Also, my hair fell off my head at some point. Canonically, I explain this as my avatar got cancer from tearing out the asbestos walls and lead pipes from the old house. Old cheese didn't follow code. So yeah, it's pretty much a matter of replacing everything we developed. I find it rather fun that the shell of the old house looms over the new one. It kind of looks like a nesting doll, or like we've hatched from an egg. Now, I know, like, compared to Bloxburg, I know this looks immensely harder and way more time consuming. And in a way, it certainly is, but the amount of choices you get to make that aren't tied to floors and placement restrictions, you know, the elevation of the house, variable heights of different floors, shutter placement, coloring walls uniquely. In those regards, this game wins 10 times over. I know it's all technically possible in Bloxburg, but not practically so. Mostly because of money, but I've beat that dead horse so much already. One deviation I considered, I thought about adding a large gable in the center of the roof. This might have worked, but it didn't really flesh out in a way that I found useful, if that makes sense, so I removed it. I wanted the eye drawn to the gable above the front door, and the larger one knocked off that symmetry. I had a couple interesting player interactions during the process as well. One of you guys actually shouted me out, and that was cool. I appreciate that. It's one of the reasons I really like this game. The community is so small, we get to have things like this. I also got to do a game someone had made. They led me over. I kept dying to the window, but I found some parts really funny. Like, one of the levels is just really long hallways that snaked around, and the entire time I was in there, you could say something and they may or may not respond, which I thought added to the atmosphere. I tried it a couple times, but I couldn't make it past this point. I'm not sure if I was missing something or what, but in retrospect, I think there was a secret thing in the wall I missed or something. There was also something I watched unfold in chat, which is another reason for me to like this game. Those are two real people relating their real struggles. These are problems that could befall anyone, and this game is recognized as a space that is safe enough to have these sort of introspections. I can remember similar situations over the years where so many people in chat would confide their relationships, school, or just familial issues, and others in the game offering their advice or just there to listen. In another player interaction, I'm yet again humbled by the people in this community who understand this game way better than I ever could. I legitimately didn't know a lot of this was even possible, and it gives me so many more techniques to practice. They were also very complimentary, which I appreciate, and I just want to say I really enjoyed my tour of their home. But we should be working on our own home, which we've just about finished up. I know there's an entire backside and interior that's missing, but I figured it's kind of like an homage, or we can just randomly attribute it to have metaphorical meaning. The incomplete facade of the house represents the facade we put up on our daily lives. I mean, we all know what that means. But here's the final product. I know it's not anything grandiose or reinventive, it's kind of just a house. But it's my house. 6 years in the making, believe it or not. Something I quite enjoy is just looking back at what you considered your magnum opus years ago and now being competent enough to render it in a way that you might have originally intended. We're far from perfection, but we're also far from where we started, and it's important to remember that. You inevitably improve as you practice, though I wouldn't attribute every difference here to myself. Obviously, a lot in this game had to change to allow this to even occur. So it's not just in the practice, but also the tools you use. But I don't have an elegant way to end this, so goodbye. See you again in 3 years.